In the hierarchy of ESPN, where do you think Pat McAfee ranks, or even does that high price talent outrank executives?
Oh yeah, I mean, of course, it depends on which executive. I mean,
Yeah,
nobody's outranking Bob Iger, okay? Like that's not gonna happen. But I think or Jimmy Pitaro, like, or even Burt Magnus. It's like I think those are like sort of the golden three that you have there. Um, but everybody beyond that, I mean, I think they clearly made a decision with Norby Williamson. He may be valued in the company in terms of like, how other executives look at him. I mean, even by some certain talent, because he has good relationship with some talent. He just doesn't have good relationship with a lot of people.
yeah.
And so I think McAfee used his leverage. He pulled his card. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew who he could piss off and who he couldn't. So, and that's not to suggest he's pissed off at more executives, but I think he knew he could see the long game in this and knew it would turn out in his favor. Now, I think he's becoming a face of ESPN. Like for me, I would consider Stephen A. Smith to be the face of ESPN
Sure.
currently. But it is interesting because I've had this conversation with other people at ESPN and just other friends of mine in media. I don't even think Stephen A. Smith could have done what Pat McAfee did. I don't think he could have. And he is as powerful and draws as many eyeballs as anybody in that place. He's probably the most recognizable ESPN personality. And so, but I don't think even he would have the leverage to do something like that.
So why is it that Pat has that leverage? Is it because of his connections to Bob Iger and Jimmy Pitaro and Burke Magnus, or is it more because he is not afraid to leave ESPN if it comes to that?
So I think mentality works. And Pat McAfee, I think part of what will make him very successful at ESPN is that he doesn't need ESPN. And when you're able to kind of carry that level of fearlessness with you into your content, I think it makes the content, better. And I think and to some degree, it makes your experience better there because you have this inner knowledge. Like, I don't need to be here. I chose to be here.
Right.
And you will navigate much differently based off that. I think Stephen A. Smith loves ESPN and he loves being on ESPN. And that's not to suggest that Stephen A. Smith could not succeed without ESPN. He absolutely could. But I think he has a different relationship with the company than Pat McAfee does. Pat McAfee is new to ESPN. He's new to the culture. Like, I don't think the culture at ESPN means anything to him. Just outside looking in, I mean, we've never had that certain
Sure.
discussion. And when you know that you don't need them and you know that you could possibly be bigger when you leave there, he's going to be operating and moving differently than a lot of people in there who feel like that they need the ESPN platform.
Yeah, I think Stephen A. absolutely could be successful without ESPN, and he will be whenever it comes to that. But I do think that he still values traditional television more so than Pat does at this point.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. And, Stephen A. came up as a very traditional journalist in traditional corporate media. So I think it is part of like sort of an ingrained mentality that he has and a lot of people there have is that, okay, this is kind of the way you do things. ESPN's a legacy media corporation, and it's also the destination job. And so like I definitely see, Stephen A. having like a much different feeling than
Right.
somebody like Pat McAfee would.